The council chamber floated in the dark void of space, a massive ring of metal and light where representatives from 847 different worlds gathered to decide the fate of the galaxy. Inside the Great Hall, beings of every imaginable shape and size sat in their designated seats. Some breathed oxygen, others methane. Some had scales, others had fur, and a few had bodies made of something that looked like living crystal. Captain Han Jiwoo stood at the human observation deck, watching the proceedings with tired eyes. She had been serving as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council for 3 years now, and most days felt like 1,000 years. The endless debates, the political games, the careful dance of diplomacy between species who sometimes couldn't even see the same spectrum of light. But she did it because it mattered. Because peace mattered. Her daughter, Young Kyung, was 7 years old now and attended the Diplomatic Academy on Council Station Prime. The girl loved it there, making friends with alien children whose parents served the council just like Jiwoo did. Just yesterday, Young Kyung had come home excited about a new friend, a small creature with 6 legs who could change colors. The innocence of children, Jiwoo thought. They saw no barriers between species. The human delegation will please pay attention, a voice boomed through the chamber. Director Thalvin, the reptilian who led the council, was looking directly at her. His scales were deep green and his eyes were sharp and intelligent. Jiwoo straightened. My apologies, Director. Please continue. Ambassador Veltros rose from his seat. He was an insectoid, tall and thin with 4 arms and compound eyes that reflected light in strange patterns. His voice came through a translator device that hung around his neck. I wish to raise a matter that has troubled my people for some time. The first law of this council. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The first law was not something that was questioned. Ever. The first law states that no species shall deliberately harm human children. Veltros continued. His mandibles clicked together in what might have been annoyance. This law has stood for 3 centuries. But I ask you, honored members, why do humans receive this special protection? Are their young more valuable than ours? Are human children worth more than the children of the Vexari, or the Kolven or my own people? Jiwoo felt her jaw tighten. She activated her communication panel. Director, may I respond? Thalvin nodded slowly. The human ambassador may speak. Jiwoo descended the steps to the chamber floor. Every eye, lens, and sensory organ in the room focused on her. She had given this speech before in smaller settings, but never to the full council. Ambassador Veltros asks a fair question, she began, her voice calm and measured. Why does the first law exist? The answer is not because human children are more valuable. The answer is because of history, because of what happened when someone made the mistake of harming them. She activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above the council floor. Ships burning, planets scarred, entire star systems reduced to debris fields. 300 years ago, humanity made first contact with the galaxy. We were eager, perhaps too eager. We sent colony ships into space, filled with families seeking new worlds. One of those ships, the Morning Star, carried 8,000 people. 2,000 of them were children. The hologram showed a beautiful vessel, white and silver, its hull painted with images of Earth's flowers and animals. A coalition of species, threatened by humanity's rapid expansion, decided to send a message. They intercepted the Morning Star at the edge of the Kepler system. They demanded humanity retreat to our home system or face consequences. Jiwoo paused, her voice dropping lower. When the Morning Star's captain refused, they opened fire. The ship had no weapons. It was a colony vessel. 8,000 people died in 47 seconds, including 2,000 children whose only crime was being born human. The chamber was completely silent now. What followed is recorded in your archives as the Burning Century, though it only lasted 38 years. Humanity mobilized every resource we had. We built weapons your scientists still don't fully understand. We trained every able-bodied person for war, and we hunted down every single species that participated in that attack. More images appeared. Human warships, dark and terrible, emerging from quantum tunnels. Planetary defenses crumbling. Fleets turning to dust. 14 species went extinct, Jiwoo said quietly. 31 more were reduced to primitive technology levels. Humanity burned a path across 200 light-years of space, and we did not stop until every government that authorized that attack was ash. We didn't target civilians, but we destroyed every military installation, every warship, every weapons facility. We made it impossible for those species to ever threaten anyone again. She looked directly at Veltros. The first law exists, Ambassador, because the galaxy learned that humans will tolerate almost anything. Insults, territorial disputes, trade disagreements, even personal violence, but harm our children, and we will remind you that we are capable of ending entire civilizations. The first law is not a privilege. It is a warning. Veltros's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among his people. That was 3 centuries ago. Humanity has been peaceful since then. You have integrated into the Council, followed our laws, become a productive member of galactic society. Perhaps the species that now inhabits the stars is different from the one that waged the burning century. Perhaps, Jiwoo said softly. Would you like to test that theory? The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Director Thalvin raised one clawed hand. Ambassador Veltros, this debate is concluded. The first law stands as written. It has kept the peace for 300 years, and it will continue to do so. But as Jiwoo returned to her station, she saw Veltros speaking quietly to a group of other ambassadors. They glanced toward her, then quickly looked away. A cold feeling settled in her stomach. That evening, Jiwoo picked up young Kyung from the academy. Her daughter ran toward her with a drawing clutched in her small hands. Mama, look, I drew our family on Earth. See, that's you, and that's me, and that's Uncle Daeho in his ship. Jiwoo picked up her daughter and held her close, breathing in the smell of her hair. It's beautiful, sweetheart. You're very talented. As they walked home through the station's residential district, young Kyung chattered about her day. Her friend with 6 legs had taught her a game from his homeworld. Her teacher, a being made of organized energy, had shown them how stars were born. Everything was wonderful in her small, innocent world. Jiwoo smiled and listened, but part of her mind was still in that council chamber, watching Veltros and his allies whisper to each other. She thought about the sealed archives that only senior council members could access, files labeled The Burning Century, that contained detailed records of what humanity had done. Videos of human soldiers, their faces blank and emotionless, systematically dismantling alien civilizations. Reports of weapons that violated every principle of warfare that the galaxy held sacred. Earth had buried those weapons deep. The warships were in dark orbit, powered down, waiting. The soldiers had returned to peaceful lives. Humanity had chosen peace, but choice was the important word. 3 days later, Jiwoo received a message from her brother Daeho. He was a commander in the human defense fleet, captain of a stealth frigate called Silent Promise. Hey, big sister, his recorded message said. Just wanted to check in. Command has been getting strange readings near the Helio Station trade routes. Probably nothing, but they've got us on alert status. How's my favorite niece? Jiwoo replied with a cheerful message about young Kyung's latest adventures. But she made a note to check the security reports for the Helio sector. It was probably nothing. It had to be nothing. Because if it wasn't nothing, if someone was actually foolish enough to test humanity after 3 centuries of peace, then the galaxy was about to remember why the first law existed, and Jiwoo prayed to every god she didn't believe in that she was wrong. The emergency alarm woke Jiwoo at 3 in the morning, station time. Her communicator was screaming with incoming priority messages. She grabbed it with shaking hands, still half asleep, and saw the words that would change everything. Incident at Helios Station. Multiple casualties. Human children involved. She was dressed and running through the corridors in less than a minute. Other humans were emerging from their quarters too, all heading toward the command center. Their faces showed the same expression, the same terrible understanding. The command center was chaos. Screens showed footage from Helios Station, a major trading hub 3 systems away. A school transport had been attacked. The transport that carried human children to and from the Diplomatic Academy's branch campus there. Director Thalvin was already present, his green scales looking pale under the harsh lights. He turned to Jiwoo as she entered. Captain Han, I am so very sorry. Show me, Jiwoo said. Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, flat and cold. The footage played. The transport was a small civilian vessel, unarmed, marked with bright colors and the universal symbol for carrying children. It had been leaving Helios Station when 3 ships dropped out of quantum space directly in its path. The ships were unmarked, but their weapon signatures were clear in the data analysis. The transport pilot, a human woman named Kim Mirai, had tried to evade. She had sent out distress calls. She had done everything right. But the attacking ships had opened fire with precision weapons, targeting the transport's engines first, then systematically destroying its escape pods as they launched. 12 children died. 17 more were critically injured. Pilot Mirai was dead, killed while trying to protect her passengers. "Where's young Kyung?" Jiwoo asked. Her voice was still flat, emotionless. Shock. Some distant part of her mind recognized. She was in shock. A medical officer stepped forward. "Captain Han, your daughter was on that transport. She's listed among the deceased." "I'm so sorry," the world tilted. Jiwoo felt hands catching her, lowering her into a chair. Someone was talking to her, but the words were just noise. Young Kyung was dead. Her baby, her 7-year-old daughter who loved making friends with alien children and drawing pictures of their family, was dead. "Who?" The word came out as a whisper. "We don't know yet," Thalvin said. "The ships fled immediately after the attack. But we have a witness." A station worker named Craval was doing maintenance on the external hull. His helmet camera captured footage of the attack. They played the new footage. It was grainy, taken from a distance, but it showed the attacking ships clearly. And there, on one of the hulls, partially obscured but visible if you enhance the image, was an insignia. Jiwoo knew that insignia. Every human ambassador knew the symbols of every council species. "Veltros," she said. "That's a Vexari military marking. And those other ships, those are Kolthan designs." Thalvin's eyes widened. "That's not possible. Council members would never, wouldn't they?" Jiwoo stood up and everyone in the room took a step back from her. Veltros stood before the entire council 3 weeks ago and questioned the first law. He said humanity had gone soft. And now, coincidentally, human children are murdered by ships belonging to his coalition? She activated her communicator. "This is Captain Han Jiwoo, human ambassador to the Galactic Council. I am invoking Article 7 of the First Law. Earth demands immediate surrender of all individuals responsible for the attack on Helios Station. You have 48 hours. Captain," Thalvin said urgently, "please let us investigate properly. If we act in haste, 48 hours, Jiwoo repeated, or Earth will respond according to historical precedent." Across human space, the call went out. Every human in the galaxy heard it. Every defense station, every outpost, every ship. The message was simple and clear. They killed our children. Daeho received the message aboard the Silent Promise. He was Jiwoo's younger brother, and young Kyung had been his favorite niece. He read the casualty list 3 times, hoping he had misunderstood. But her name was there, clear and final. He called his sister immediately. Jiwoo's face appeared on the screen, and he barely recognized her. Her eyes were dry but empty, like something essential had been burned out of her. "Jiwoo," he said softly, "I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry," she said. "Be ready. If they don't surrender, we go to war." "The fleet is already mobilizing," Daeho told her. "Admiral Choi has activated the old vessels. The ones we mothballed 300 years ago. Those ships, the ones built specifically for the burning century. Humanity had kept them in dark orbit around Earth and Mars, maintained but unpowered, hoping they would never be needed again. Now they were waking up, on Earth." Admiral Choi Hyunwoo stood in the command center buried deep beneath the Korean peninsula. He was 80 years old, and he had spent his entire life hoping he would never have to activate the war protocols. But now the board in front of him was lit up with red lights, each one representing a warship coming online. Dr. Park Ariam worked frantically in the medical bay on Council Station, treating the 17 surviving children. They would live, but they would carry scars, both physical and mental, for the rest of their lives. One little boy kept asking for his sister. His sister was among the 12 who hadn't survived. Ariam had to excuse herself 3 times to cry in the bathroom. She had studied medicine to save lives, not to patch together children who survived an atrocity. Meanwhile, across 6 different star systems, the coalition species that Veltros had assembled were beginning to understand what they had done. The Vexari Military Command received intelligence reports about human fleet movements and felt their confidence waver. The humans were deploying more ships than the entire Vexari Navy possessed. And these weren't modern vessels. These were old warships, 3 centuries old, that somehow still functioned perfectly. The Kolthan government issued a public statement denying any involvement in the attack. They claimed the ships must have been stolen or hijacked. But their own people didn't believe them, and neither did anyone else. 4 other species in the coalition began evacuating their core worlds, moving civilians and resources to distant colonies. They remembered the old stories, the ones their grandparents had told about the burning century, about human warships that could destroy a planet's entire defense grid in minutes, about human soldiers who fought with a cold, calculated efficiency that was more terrifying than any rage. Jiwoo stood in Young Kyung's room at their quarters. Everything was exactly as her daughter had left it that morning. Drawings on the walls, toys scattered on the floor, a half-finished homework assignment about the council's history on the desk. She picked up Young Kyung's favorite stuffed animal, a small tiger from Earth. Her daughter had named it Harangi and carried it everywhere until she decided she was too old for such things. But she had kept it on her bed just in case. Jiwoo held the tiger close and finally, alone in her daughter's room, let herself cry. She cried for the future Young Kyung would never have, for the graduations and birthdays and weddings that would never happen, for the grandchildren Jiwoo would never meet. Then she carefully set the tiger back on the bed, wiped her eyes, and walked out. She had work to do. The 48-hour deadline was counting down. 29 hours remained. Director Thalavin worked desperately to find a peaceful solution. He contacted Veltros directly, demanding an explanation, but the insectoid ambassador had gone into hiding, along with the other coalition leaders. That alone was an admission of guilt. Other council members approached Jiwoo, begging her to extend the deadline to allow more time for investigation. She refused every request. They had 3 centuries to learn this lesson, she told them. The first law was written in the blood of our children once before. Did they think we were joking? Did they think it was a metaphor? With 18 hours remaining, the Vexari government finally broke their silence. They claimed the attack had been unauthorized, carried out by rogue military elements. They offered to arrest these individuals and turn them over to human custody. Jiwoo's response was broadcast across the entire galaxy. 48 hours for surrender. We didn't specify whose surrender. If your government authorized it, surrender your government. If your military acted alone, surrender your military. We don't care about your internal politics. 12 children are dead. Someone pays for that. The galaxy watched in growing horror as the deadline approached. Space traffic ground to a halt as ships refused to travel anywhere near Coalition space. Border systems evacuated, not wanting to be caught in the crossfire. And everywhere, humans prepared for war with the calm efficiency of a species that had done this before. There was no anger, no screaming, no chaos, just quiet, methodical preparation. That was what terrified the other species most. If humanity had raged and shouted, that would have been understandable. But this cold, organized mobilization was something else entirely. This was a species that knew exactly how to dismantle civilizations and was proceeding with the systematic approach of a scheduled task. Daiho watched the countdown clock on his ship's bridge. 4 hours remained. Orders from Fleet Command, his communications officer reported. All ships are to proceed to designated targets immediately. Rules of engagement are weapons free on all military targets. The Vexari homeworld had 3 moons and a population of 14 billion. It had stood unconquered for 12,000 years, protected by one of the most advanced defense systems in the galaxy. Orbital stations bristled with weapons. Shield. Generators created layers of protection around the planet. Early warning systems could detect approaching ships from 3 light-years away. None of it mattered. Captain An Minho stood on the bridge of the Eternal Guardian, one of the ancient dreadnoughts that humanity had kept mothballed since the burning century. The ship was massive, larger than most space stations, its hull painted in dark colors that seemed to absorb light. Weapon systems that other species had tried for centuries to understand lined its surface. Target the orbital defense platforms, Minho ordered calmly. Standard pattern Alpha. Disable but don't destroy unless they continue firing. His weapons officer, a young woman named Lee Hana, acknowledged the order. Her hands moved across the controls with practiced efficiency. Outside, the Eternal Guardian's weapons came to life. What happened next would be studied by military academies across the galaxy for centuries. The human ship engaged 47 orbital defense platforms simultaneously. Each platform was designed to withstand concentrated fire from entire fleets. Each one had shields that could absorb enough energy to power a small city. The Eternal Guardian destroyed them all in 6 minutes. The weapons used were something called quantum disruptors, technology that humanity had developed during the Burning Century and never shared with anyone. They didn't just damage targets, they made the targets cease to exist on a fundamental level. One moment the defense platforms were there, the next they were simply gone, not even debris remained. The Vexari defense fleet scrambled to respond. 300 warships, the pride of their military, moved to engage the human vessel. "Sir, enemy fleet is approaching," Hana reported. "Maintain position," Minho said. "Broadcast on all frequencies. Any ship that powers down weapons and retreats will not be fired upon. We are not here to commit genocide." 17 ships immediately powered down and retreated. The rest kept coming. What followed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The Eternal Guardian moved through the Vexari fleet like a knife through paper. Its shields held against everything the enemy threw at it. Its weapons fired with perfect accuracy, disabling engine systems, destroying weapon mounts, crippling ships without killing their crews. In 30 minutes, the Vexari fleet was reduced to floating wrecks. Escape pods filled space as crews abandoned their disabled vessels. The Eternal Guardian moved among them, using tractor beams to gather the pods into safe zones where rescue ships could retrieve them. "Send message to the surface," Minho ordered. "They have 1 hour to evacuate all military installations. After that, we're going to destroy them." Similar scenes played out across Coalition space. Human forces hit all 6 species simultaneously, appearing from quantum tunnels with precise timing. Every military base, every shipyard, every weapons facility became a target. But the humans were careful. Eerily careful. Zilnak was a civilian engineer on a coal-then industrial station. She worked in the manufacturing sector, building components for civilian ships. When the alarm started, she thought it was another drill. The station had run dozens of drills since the tensions with humanity began. Then she saw human warships through the viewport, and she knew it was real. The station's military commander ordered all defensive weapons to fire. Zilnak watched in horror as the human ships simply shrugged off the attacks, their shields glowing briefly, then fading. Then the human ships returned fire, and every weapons platform on the station vanished. A voice came over the station's communication system, speaking perfect Kolden. "This is Commander Lee Daeho of the Earth Defense Force. All civilians have 10 minutes to evacuate to the marked safe zones. All military personnel have 10 minutes to surrender. After that, we will destroy this station's military infrastructure." Zilnak ran. Everyone ran. The corridors were chaos as thousands of people fled toward the civilian sections. She expected the humans to fire anyway, to kill everyone regardless of the warning. That's what the government had told them humans would do. But 10 minutes passed, then 15. The humans waited. When the evacuation was complete, when sensors confirmed that only empty military sections remained, then and only then did the human ships open fire. Zilnak watched from a viewport in the safe zone as the entire military sector of the station simply ceased to exist. The weapons, the barracks, the command center, all of it gone in seconds. But the civilian sections, the homes and schools and hospitals, remained untouched. "Why?" someone asked in the crowd. "Why spare us?" Zilnak didn't have an answer. The humans should have been monsters, rage-filled killers seeking revenge. Instead, they were precise, controlled, and terrifyingly efficient. General Kang Sun-hee led the ground forces deployed to several coalition worlds. Her mission was to capture military leadership and secure weapons facilities. She had trained her entire life for combat, but she had never expected to actually see it. Her forces landed on the coal-then colony world of Heva, where Coalition Military Command had established a backup headquarters. The defending forces outnumbered her 3-1, but they had no experience fighting humans. Sun-hee's soldiers moved through the city like ghosts. They used technology that made them invisible to most sensors, weapons that fired smart ammunition, that could track targets around corners, and coordination that seemed almost telepathic. The Kolden defenders never stood a chance. But again, the humans were precise. They targeted only military personnel. When civilians got caught in crossfire, human medics immediately provided aid. When a school was hit by stray weapons fire, human forces stopped their advance to evacuate the children to safety. The Kolden defenders were confused. Their government had told them humans were savage beasts who would kill anything that moved. But these soldiers were disciplined, professional, and seemed more concerned with minimizing casualties than with winning quickly. It made the defeat even more devastating. The coalition forces weren't just losing, they were being dismantled by an enemy that was barely trying, an enemy that was simultaneously conquering them and protecting their civilians. Director Thalvin watched the reports flooding into the council chambers and felt a deep, cold fear settle into his bones. He had access to the sealed archives, he had read the reports from the burning century. But reading about humanity's military capabilities and watching them in action were two very different things. The coalition species were losing everything. 3 of the 6 had already lost 90% of their military forces. The others were desperately trying to negotiate separate peace deals, but humanity wasn't responding to any communication except surrender. "This is insanity," one council member said. "A jellyfish-like being from a peaceful species. The humans are committing war crimes." "Are they?" Thalvin asked quietly. "Show me where." "They warn before they strike. They evacuate civilians. They accept surrenders. They provide medical aid to enemy wounded. They are following every law of war that this council has established. But the scale of destruction is entirely focused on military targets," Thalvin interrupted. "The humans are not committing genocide. They are not targeting civilians. They are systematically destroying the coalition's ability to make war, nothing more. Then why does it feel so terrible to watch?" Thalvin stared at the screens showing human warships moving through space. "Because we are watching a species that has perfected the art of war. They don't fight in anger. They fight the way a surgeon operates, with precision and control. That is what makes it terrible. They can do this forever, and they will never lose discipline, never make mistakes, never stop until their objectives are achieved." Another council member spoke up, an ancient being who had lived through the burning century. "I told you all, I warned you. But no one wanted to listen to the old stories. You thought humanity had changed, had become soft. But they never changed. They simply chose peace. And when you forced them to choose war instead, you guaranteed this outcome." Ambassadors from over 400 species had signed a declaration condemning the coalition's attack on human children. They reaffirmed their support for the first law and pledged to assist humanity in any way needed. Some offered medical supplies for the injured children. Others offered intelligence about coalition military positions. The galaxy was taking sides, and it was not siding with the species that had murdered children. Veltros and the other coalition leaders remained in hiding. They had fled to a supposedly impregnable fortress on a neutral mining world called Krevnal. The world's government maintained strict neutrality in all conflicts and refused to surrender anyone who sought asylum there. Humanity's response was simple. They sent a message to Krevnal's government saying they had 24 hours to change their policy or be treated as coalition allies. Krevnal's government reviewed footage of what happened to coalition military installations and immediately agreed to allow human forces access to the fortress. Jiwoo watched all of this from the council station. She felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, no grief. Just an empty coldness that seemed to have replaced everything else inside her. Director Thalvin approached her carefully. The fortress on Krevnal had been built into the side of a mountain. It was designed to withstand orbital bombardment, had its own shield generators, and was defended by automated weapons systems that could engage thousands of targets simultaneously. The mining world's government claimed it was impossible to breach. Jiwoo stood in the briefing room aboard the Silent Promise, looking at holographic displays of the fortress. Her brother Daeho stood beside her, along with 6 other members of their strike team. "The good news is that Krevnal's government gave us complete access to the fortress schematics," Daeho said. "The bad news is Veltros hired mercenaries, about 200 of them heavily armed." Lieutenant Nam Jun, the team's tech specialist, pulled up another image. He was young, barely 25, but he had a gift for breaking into systems that seemed impossible to crack. I can disable their sensors and automated defenses, but the mercenaries will still be a problem. We go in quiet, Jiwoo said. No unnecessary casualties. The mercenaries are just doing a job. They didn't kill our children. We're here for Veltros and the coalition leadership. Engineer Rena checked her equipment. She was responsible for keeping their tech running during the mission. What if they don't surrender? The mercenaries, I mean. Then we go through them, Jiwoo said flatly. But we give them the chance. The team prepped their gear. They wore advanced combat suits that could shield them from most weapons and had built-in systems for movement and targeting. Each suit was painted in dark colors and had technology that made them nearly invisible. They approached Krevnal in a small stealth shuttle, invisible to the planet's sensors. June worked his magic from orbit, sending signals that made the fortress's defense systems think everything was normal while they approached. Landing in 3 minutes, the pilot announced. Jiwoo checked her weapon one last time. It was a non-lethal pulse rifle designed to disable rather than kill. Every member of the team carried similar weapons as their primary armament. They had lethal options as backup, but orders were clear: minimize casualties. They landed on a rocky plateau 3 kilometers from the fortress. The mountain air was thin and cold. Krevnal was a harsh world, barely habitable, which was why it had become a center for mining rather than colonization. The team moved silently through the darkness. Their suits compensated for the low oxygen and harsh temperature. Rena deployed small drones that flew ahead, mapping the area and identifying threats. 2 guards at the entrance, she reported quietly, armed but not alert. Daeho signaled for Jiwoo to hold position while he moved forward. He approached the guards like a shadow, faster than they could react. 2 quick strikes and both guards were unconscious, their weapons disabled. Entry clear, he whispered. They moved into the fortress through a maintenance entrance that June had unlocked remotely. Inside, the corridors were carved from stone and reinforced with metal. Emergency lighting cast everything in red. I'm accessing their communication network, June said, his fingers dancing across a portable terminal. Got it. The mercenaries are concentrated on levels 3 and 4. Veltros and the coalition leadership are on level 7, deepest part of the fortress. Can you reach them? Jiwoo asked. The mercenaries? Already done. Sending them a message now. On screens throughout the fortress, a message appeared in multiple languages. This is the Earth Defense Force. We are here to arrest the individuals responsible for the Helios Station attack. Anyone who lays down their weapons will not be harmed. Anyone who resists will be disabled. You have 5 minutes to decide. The fortress erupted in chaos. Mercenaries ran to defensive positions, but many hesitated. They had seen what happened to the coalition militaries. Fighting humans seemed like a very bad idea. About 60 mercenaries immediately dropped their weapons and moved to designated surrender zones. The rest fortified their positions and prepared to fight. Stubborn, Daeho muttered. Their choice, Jiwoo said. Move forward. What followed was brutal but controlled. The human team moved through the fortress with practiced efficiency. When mercenaries opened fire, they responded with overwhelming force but using non-lethal weapons. Pulse rifles sent waves of energy that disrupted nervous systems, knocking targets unconscious without permanent harm. The mercenaries fought hard. They were professionals after all, but they might as well have been fighting ghosts. The human suits made the team nearly invisible. Their movements were coordinated perfectly, and their weapons hit with absolute accuracy. In 20 minutes, the team had disabled over 100 mercenaries and reached level 7. That's where they found Koltha, one of Veltros's co-conspirators. He was a large being, almost 3 meters tall with 4 arms and thick armor plates covering his body. He stood in front of the entrance to Veltros's chambers holding a massive weapon. I won't let you pass, Koltha said. His translator made his voice deep and resonant. Jiwoo stepped forward, her rifle pointed at him. Stand aside. This doesn't have to end badly for you. Do you know why we did it? Koltha asked. The attack. Do you want to know? It doesn't matter why, Jiwoo said. It wasn't supposed to be lethal, Koltha continued. His voice wavered. We were going to kidnap the children. Hold them for a few hours. Force humanity to negotiate. That's all. We thought if we could make you afraid, make you feel vulnerable, you would agree to remove the first law. Jiwoo felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. You were going to kidnap children to prove humanity had gone soft. The pilot fought back, Koltha said. Kim Mire, that was her name. She should have surrendered. We would have released everyone unharmed after negotiations. But she fought and the situation escalated and then he trailed off. And then you murdered 12 children, Jiwoo finished. It was a mistake. Koltha's voice broke. A terrible mistake. We panicked. We tried to cover it up. We never meant for anyone to die. Daeho spoke quietly from beside Jiwoo. Intentions don't resurrect my niece. Koltha slowly lowered his weapon. I know. I have seen what humanity has done to our worlds. I have seen our fleets destroyed, our military dismantled, our governments collapsing, all because of our arrogance. We thought you were weak. We were wrong. He dropped the weapon completely. Veltros is inside. He knows you're coming. He's been watching on the security feeds. He wants to negotiate. There are no negotiations, Jiwoo said. They secured Koltha and moved to the chamber door. June overrode the locks and the door slid open. Veltros sat in the center of a luxurious room surrounded by the other coalition leaders. They all looked defeated, their confidence gone. The insectoid ambassador's mandibles moved rapidly, a sign of extreme stress. Captain Han, Veltros said, I want to surrender. Good, Jiwoo said. Stand up, all of you. They complied, moving slowly. Jiwoo's team secured each of them, placing restraints designed for different body types. I need you to understand, Veltros said as she approached him. We made a mistake, a catastrophic mistake, but we never intended for this to happen. Jiwoo stood directly in front of him. Let me tell you about intention. My daughter intended to grow up. She intended to graduate from the academy. She intended to maybe join the diplomatic corps like her mother, or the defense force like her uncle. She had a lot of intentions. None of them matter now because she's dead. I am sorry, Veltros whispered. Sorry doesn't mean anything, Jiwoo said. You stood before the council and questioned why human children deserved protection. The galaxy told you why. History told you why. But you thought you knew better. You thought 300 years of peace meant humanity had forgotten how to fight. You were wrong about that too. She activated her communicator. This is Captain Han. We have the targets. Extraction requested. During the extraction, they passed through the corridors filled with unconscious or surrendering mercenaries. Medical teams were already arriving to treat them, human medics working alongside local doctors. One young mercenary, barely conscious, grabbed Jiwoo's arm as she passed. Why? He asked groggily. Why didn't you kill us? Because you didn't kill our children, Jiwoo said simply. You were just in our way. Back aboard the Silent Promise, Daeho found his sister sitting alone in the observation deck, staring at the stars. You did well today, he said quietly, sitting beside her. I arrested the people who ordered my daughter's murder, Jiwoo said. It doesn't feel like anything. She's still gone. The fleet is asking for orders, Daeho said. The coalition wants to negotiate surrender terms now that we have their leadership. What should we tell them? Jiwoo was quiet for a long moment. Tell them we want unconditional surrender, complete disarmament, war crime tribunals, and changes to the first law, changes. It shouldn't just protect human children, Jiwoo said. It should protect all children, every species, so that no one else has to feel what I'm feeling right now. Daeho nodded slowly. That's very generous of you. It's not generous, Jiwoo said. It's practical. If the galaxy learns to protect all children, then maybe we never have to do this again. She stood up, her reflection in the viewport showing a woman who had aged years in just a few days. Come on, we need to get the prisoners to Council Station. The galaxy is waiting for justice. As the Silent Promise jumped to quantum space, heading back toward the Council, the war across Coalition space began to wind down. The trial was held in the Grand Council chamber, broadcast to every inhabited world in the galaxy. Billions of beings watched as Veltros and the other coalition leaders were brought before the assembled representatives of 847 species. Judge Talmira presided over the proceedings. She was ancient even by galactic standards, a being of crystalline structure who had lived for over 6,000 years. She had been alive during the Burning Century, had witnessed humanity's first terrible introduction to the galaxy, and had helped write the first law. This tribunal is convened, Talmira said, her voice ringing through the chamber like music made from breaking glass, to determine guilt in the matter of the Helios Station attack, and to pass judgment on those responsible. Veltros and the others sat in specially designed restraint fields. The insectoid looked smaller somehow, diminished, his compound eyes dim. The evidence was presented systematically. Junes recovered data showing the planning meetings, communications between coalition leadership discussing the operation, orders given to military units, the helmet camera footage from Craval showing the attack itself. Then came the testimonies. Survivors from the transport described what happened. Medical records of the 17 injured children were entered into evidence. And finally, Jiwoo stood to speak. The chamber fell completely silent. My daughter's name was Young Kyung, Jiwoo began. Her voice was steady but quiet. She was 7 years old. She loved drawing. She had a talent for making friends with anyone, regardless of species. She wanted to be a diplomat like me when she grew up, because she believed in the council and what it represented. She looked directly at Veltros. Young Kyung believed that different species could live together in peace. She believed that understanding and cooperation were always better than conflict. She believed in the best parts of what this council represents. Jiwoo pulled out a drawing, holding it up so the cameras could see it. It showed a group of different alien children holding hands in a circle, with Young Kyung in the center. She drew this 3 days before she died. It was a project for school about unity and friendship. She got the highest marks in her class. She carefully set the drawing on the evidence table. That's who you killed. Not a soldier, not a threat, not a political pawn. A 7-year-old girl who believed the galaxy was a good place. There was a long silence after Jiwoo stepped down. Several council members were openly weeping, and even Veltros's mandibles had stopped moving. Then came testimony that changed the tone of the trial. Koltha, who had agreed to cooperate fully, explained the coalition's reasoning. We believed humanity had grown soft, he said, his voice heavy with shame. 300 years of peace. 300 years of following council laws and participating in trade. We thought the species that fought the burning century was gone, replaced by diplomats and merchants. He gestured toward Veltros. We thought if we could demonstrate that humanity was vulnerable, that they couldn't actually protect everyone anymore. Other species would question the first law. We planned to take the children, hold them safely for a few hours and return them unharmed. It was supposed to be a political statement. But the pilot fought back. The prosecutor said, yes. Kim Mirai refused to surrender. She sent distress signals. She tried to escape. And our forces, they panicked. The operation was supposed to be bloodless. When violence began, they didn't know how to stop it. Kolta's voice broke. 12 children died because we underestimated one brave woman's determination to protect them. Director Thalvin took the stand next. I want to read something into the record, he said. These are excerpts from the sealed archives from the burning century. He activated a display. Old footage appeared, grainy but clear enough. Human warships moving through space. Battles that lasted seconds. Entire fleets reduced to debris. But also footage of human soldiers evacuating civilians from war zones. Human medics treating enemy wounded. Human engineers rebuilding infrastructure on conquered worlds. This is what humanity did 300 years ago, Thalvin said. They destroyed military forces completely, but they went to extraordinary lengths to minimize civilian casualties. They built hospitals on worlds they had just conquered. They provided food and medicine to populations whose governments had attacked them. And when the war ended, they helped rebuild what they had destroyed. He looked at the coalition leaders. You thought humanity had changed, but the evidence shows they have always been this way. Capable of terrible destruction, yes, but also capable of great compassion. The first law wasn't written because humanity is monstrous. It was written because when you threaten their children, they become unstoppable, and the only way to avoid total annihilation is to never cross that line. Then came an unexpected moment. A small delegation entered the chamber, led by a child. The child was from one of the coalition species, barely old enough to speak before the council. My name is Krishan, the child said through a translator. The voice was high and uncertain. I come from the Kolthen homeworld. My parent was a soldier who fought against humanity. They were killed when their ship was destroyed. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. I am here to ask the council for mercy, Krishan continued, not for the leaders who planned the attack. They deserve punishment, but for my people, for all the coalition people who are suffering because of what our leaders did. The child looked at Jiwoo. I know you lost your daughter. I am sorry. I lost my parent. Now millions of children across coalition space have lost parents, lost homes, lost their futures. I ask you, please don't punish us for what our leaders did. Jiwoo closed her eyes. When she opened them, there were tears. Judge Talmira called for a recess. The tribunal would reconvene after deliberation. In a private chamber, Jiwoo met with Admiral Choi and other human leadership. They discussed terms for ending the war and what humanity would demand. We could take everything, Admiral Choi said. Their territory, their resources. We have the power to do it. But we won't, Jiwoo said firmly. That's not who we are. We don't conquer. We defend. What do you propose? Admiral Choi asked. Jiwoo outlined her plan. Complete disarmament of coalition military forces to 10% of their previous capability. War crime tribunals for everyone involved in planning or executing the attack. Reparations paid to the families of the victims. Human monitoring of coalition military rebuilding for 50 years. And one more thing. We reform the first law, Jiwoo said. Make it universal. Harming any species' children becomes a galactic crime. Enforced by the Council itself, not just human children, all children. Admiral Choi studied her. You want to protect the children of the species that murdered your daughter. I want to make sure no parent of any species ever feels what I feel right now, Jiwoo said. That's the only way this means anything. When the tribunal reconvened, Judge Talmira announced the verdict. Feltros and the coalition leadership were found guilty of crimes against sapient beings. They were sentenced to life imprisonment in a human facility, in orbit around a dead world where they could see the stars but never reach them. Then came the terms for the coalition species. Disarmament, reparations, monitoring. The coalition governments, what remained of them, accepted all terms. Finally, Judge Talmira addressed the council as a whole. This tribunal proposes a change to the first law. It shall no longer protect only human children. It shall protect the young of all sapient species. Any act of deliberate harm against children shall be considered a crime against the entire galactic community, and the council shall respond with immediate military force. The vote was overwhelming. 843 species voted in favor. Only 4 abstained. None opposed. The new Universal Protection Law was ratified. 3 months later, Jiwoo stood at a memorial on Council Station. 12 trees had been planted, 1 for each child who died at Helios Station. Each tree was from Earth, carefully tended in special environmental chambers. They would grow here, a living reminder of what was lost and why the laws existed. Representatives from every council species attended the dedication ceremony, including delegates from the coalition worlds who came with heads bowed and apologies on their lips. Kreishan was there too, the child who had spoken at the trial. The young Kolden approached Jiwoo hesitantly. Captain Han, Kreishan said quietly, I wanted to thank you. For what? Jiwoo asked. For not destroying us. For giving us a chance to be better. The child hesitated. And I wanted to give you this. Kreishan held out a small object. It was a carving, made in the traditional Kolthen style, showing 2 figures holding hands. One was clearly human, the other Kolthen. I made it myself, Krishan said. To remember, so we never forget what hatred costs. Jiwoo accepted the carving with trembling hands. She knelt down to the child's level. Thank you. This means more than you know. As the ceremony concluded, Director Thalvin approached Jiwoo. You're resigning from the ambassadorship, I hear. Yes, Jiwoo confirmed. I'm going to work with Dr. Park Ariam on child protection initiatives across the galaxy, making sure the new law has teeth. A worthy cause, Thalvin said. And your brother? Commander Deho? He's transferring to peacekeeping operations. He'll help rebuild some of the infrastructure that was damaged. He says it's time to build instead of break.